Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're jumping into a really fascinating story from ancient Buddhist teachings. It's called the Anandaseṭṭhi Vatthu.
Yes, and it's more than just an old story. It really explores some deep themes, doesn't it? Wealth, attachment, consequences of our actions.
Absolutely. We're going to be looking at this character, Anandaseṭṭhi. He
Oh.
was incredibly rich, but also legendarily miserly.
And his story takes such a surprising turn after his death. It really
Well,
makes you think.
It does. We'll unpack it, all the twists, the turns, and, the lessons that still feel relevant today, especially about our relationship with stuff, with possessions, and even family.
It's quite amazing how these ancient texts can still speak so directly to us now.
So let's start with the man himself, Anandaseṭṭhi. Lived in Savatya, apparently had 80 crores in assets. I mean, that's just a staggering amount of wealth.
Almost unimaginable. And the texts really emphasize his extreme stinginess. The word used is mahamachari.
So not just frugal, but like deeply resistant to spending anything.
Exactly. It's this intense focus on just holding on to it, hoarding it, driven by this fear of losing it. And that seems key, doesn't it? It isolates him and sort of foreshadows what happens later.
Yeah, you really see that in how he dealt with his son, Musasiri, this bi-monthly ritual.
Right. Every fortnight, schooling him on how to manage, or really, how to hoard the family fortune.
What kind of advice did he actually give? It sounds pretty extreme.
Oh, it was. Things like, do not think this 40 crores of wealth is much. Can you imagine? 40 crores!
It's incredible.
And he'd say, existing wealth should not be given away, just flat out. And the strategy was always, new wealth should be produced.
Constantly acquire, never deplete.
Yes. His logic was, well, even spending a single kahapana, like the smallest coin, would start the process of losing it all.
It's such a paradox, isn't it? Having so much, but living with this feeling of impending loss. He had an analogy for it, too.
He did. He talked about a wise householder who sees how ointments get used up bit by bit, but also how termites build their mounds or bees gather honey.
So the takeaway was constant vigilance against spending and constant effort towards gaining more.
Precisely. That relentless drive to accumulate, never share, never enjoy. It really defined him.
Okay, so this is his mindset. He lives his life like this, and then eventually he passes away.
And crucially, he dies without telling his son Mulasiri where he hid his 5 great treasures. He clung to that secret, even in death.
Wow. So he takes the secret of his wealth with him. And after this life of just extreme miserliness, what happens next is, well, it's a shocker.
It really is a complete reversal. He's reborn, but into a family of Chandalās.
Outcasts. The absolute lowest rung of the social ladder at the time, living near the city gates of Savatthi.
Yeah, specifically in the womb of a female Chandalā, in a community of about 1,000 such families. It's a dramatic illustration of karma, you could say. His past actions, that intense attachment and miserliness leading to this kind of rebirth.
From 80 crores to that, it's a
Yeah.
huge fall. And his arrival, even before birth, had consequences.
It did. The text says that from the moment he was conceived, the whole Chandalā community started experiencing misfortune.
How so?
They stopped getting decent wages, couldn't even get enough basic food. Things got really tough for everyone there.
So, faced with this hardship, they started looking for a reason, right?
Naturally. And they decided there must be a Kalakan in among them, an unlucky or inauspicious person, basically. Someone bringing bad fortune to the whole group.
And they figured out it was linked to the unborn child.
Yes. They identified his mother as the source or the vessel of this misfortune, and they ostracized her initially.
That's incredibly harsh. So she's pregnant, probably struggling herself, and then rejected by her own community.
It must have been terrible. The text specifically mentions she barely had enough food to survive even while pregnant. But still, she gave birth to the child, that maternal instinct.
It mentions her love for him later, doesn't it? But first, the birth itself. The child wasn't, well, normal, physically.
No, not at all. The description is quite stark. His hands, feet, eyes, ears, nose, mouth, they weren't in their proper places. Extremely deformed.
Wow. And described as incredibly ugly. Like a Pamsupisakako.
A dust ghost, yes.
Yeah.
It's a powerful, unsettling image. You could almost see it as a physical manifestation of his spiritual state in his past life.
Yet despite this shocking appearance, his mother initially couldn't abandon him.
Right. The text says her maternal love, Sineho Balafoti, was just too strong. That bond is shown as, incredibly powerful, overriding even his appearance and the hardship.
But raising him must have been incredibly difficult.
Immensely. She often went hungry herself, trying to care for him. It paints a really grim picture of their struggle.
And eventually she reached a breaking point.
She did. When he was old enough, maybe just barely, to fend for himself by begging, she made that heartbreaking decision.
What did she do?
She gave him a potsherd, a piece of broken pottery to use as a begging bowl, a real symbol of poverty, and told him to go into the city.
To where provisions were made for the poor.
Exactly. And her words, they're quite poignant. She basically tells him how much hardship she's endured because of him, and that she just can't support him anymore.
He really drives home the desperation of their situation.
Absolutely. The weight of poverty, the impossible choices people have to make.
So this child, who is the reborn Anandaseṭṭhi, starts to remember his past life. He becomes Jatisaro.
Yes, the memory returns, and what does he do? Incredibly, he makes his way back to his old mansion.
Wow. Drawn back to the source of his past obsession.
Yeah.
That's ironic, doesn't quite cover it.
It's deeply ironic. He returns to this place of immense wealth, but now he's in this completely unrecognizable, pitiable state.
And the homecoming wasn't exactly warm, I take it.
Not even close. He gets turned away at the first 3 gates. No one recognizes him. Or maybe they just dismiss him.
But then he reaches the 4th gate.
Yes, and there, Mulasiri's own children, his grandchildren from his past life, see him. And they cry out in fear.
Just sheer terror at his appearance.
It highlights just how deformed he was and the stigma attached to it. And then the servants see him.
And they react badly?
Violently. They identify him as a kalakonin, that same term, the inauspicious one, and they beat him, throw him out.
Literally throw him onto the rubbish heap.
Yes. A complete brutal rejection. It shows those rigid social barriers, His past identity meant nothing now. He was just this terrifying, unlucky figure.
It seems like rock bottom, just utter despair. But then the narrative shifts again.
Yes. Just as he's lying there, the Buddha arrives on his alms round, accompanied by his chief disciple, Anandaseṭṭhi.
And the Buddha, of course, understands what's happening.
Immediately. With his insight, he grasps the whole situation. He asks Anandaseṭṭhi about the boy, and Anandaseṭṭhi explains what little he knows.
And then the Buddha takes action.
He has Anandaseṭṭhi summon Mulasiri, the son from his previous life.
So Mulasiri comes out, a crowd gathers, presumably curious about what's going on.
Right. It becomes a public scene, and the Buddha asks Mulasiri directly, pointing to the boy, "Do you know this boy?"
And Mulasiri says, "No, of course. How could he possibly recognize this figure?"
Exactly. He denies knowing him, which sets up the Buddha's incredible revelation.
What does the Buddha say?
He says quite plainly, "This is Anandaseṭṭhi, your father."
Wow. Just imagine the shock. For Mulasiri, for the crowd, it must have been completely unbelievable.
Utter disbelief. So Mulasiri challenges it, naturally.
How does the Buddha prove it?
He instructs the boy, the reborn Anandaseṭṭhi, to reveal the location of those 5 great treasures that his father had hidden before death.
The secret wealth. The knowledge only the real Anandaseṭṭhi would have.
Precisely. And the boy reveals them. That act, sharing that hidden knowledge, is the undeniable proof. It shatters Mulasiri's disbelief.
That must have been a profound moment. Seeing the undeniable truth of rebirth and karma right there.
It clearly had a huge impact. Mulasiri immediately sought refuge in the Buddha, so Sataran Saran Agamasi. He recognized the truth and turned towards the teaching.
A real conversion experience triggered by this extraordinary event.
It highlights how seeing the truth, however strange or difficult, can fundamentally change someone.
And following this, the Buddha offers a teaching.
Right.
A verse, a gatha.
Yes, a very powerful one. Puttamati danamati iti balovihanati atahiyatanonati kutuputta kututanam.
Can you break that down for us?
Sure. It basically translates to, I have sons, I have wealth, thus the fool is tormented, or afflicted, troubled. Quote, indeed, the self is not one's own, one's sons, one's wealth.
So the very things we think bring security children, money, are actually sources of worry and suffering for the fool, the person who doesn't understand the true nature of things.
Exactly. The explanation that follows the Tasathos says the fool is tormented by attachment, worried about getting these things, losing these things, keeping them going.
It's constant anxiety.
Yes. And the core insight is, atahi atananati, the self is not truly one's own. There's no permanent, fixed me that actually possesses any of this.
Because everything is impermanent, ourselves included.
That's the Buddhist understanding. Clinging to things that are inherently changeable, wealth, relationships, even our own sense of self, is bound to lead to suffering because change and loss are inevitable.
And Anandaseṭṭhi's story is the perfect, if harsh, example of this.
Right. The Buddha points it out. Despite hoarding all that wealth for his son, he ended up suffering terribly in his rebirth. And neither the money nor the son could help him then.
It really hammers home the limits of material wealth and even family ties when it comes to, deeper suffering and liberation.
It does. The focus shifts from external possessions to internal understanding.
And the impact of this teaching, there in that moment.
It was profound. The text says that at the end of this discourse, 84,000 living beings gained insight into the Dhammapada Hosi.
84,000, that's
A
incredible.
huge number. It indicates the teaching resonated deeply and was incredibly beneficial for the crowd that had gathered Mahajanasasattaka Ahositi.
So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive into Anandaseṭṭhi's story, what are the main things that stand out?
Well, certainly the clear warning about excessive attachment, especially to wealth, the painful consequences of extreme miserliness are laid bare.
And the Buddha's core teaching on impermanence, the nature of the self or non-self,
Yeah.
and how that relates to finding real peace, not just temporary security.
Definitely. And the sheer drama of the story, that rebirth, the irony of him returning as this deformed beggar to his own mansion, it really sticks with you.
It does. It forces you to think about your own life, doesn't it? What are the things we cling to? Maybe not 80 cores, but,
Yeah.
our jobs, our status, our relationships even.
Are we maybe looking for security in things that ultimately can't provide it in a lasting way? It prompts that self-reflection.
Is there maybe a different kind of wealth, a different kind of security to be found?
And that leads to the final thought, perhaps, for you listening. Given Anandaseṭṭhi's journey, what does it actually mean to possess something? Wealth, family, even our own lives.
Is there another kind of treasure, maybe an inner one, that's actually worth seeking? One that isn't subject to being lost, like Anandaseṭṭhi lost everything.
It's a powerful question to leave with. What's the real treasure?